Netflix's One Piece Season 2 doesn't just return, it arrives like a cannonball through the hull of every skeptic who ever doubted a live-action anime could carry the weight of one of the most beloved stories ever told. Where the first season asked audiences to trust the ship, this season proves the crew has earned the open ocean. The Straw Hat Pirates, led by the rubber-limbed, impossibly earnest Monkey D. Luffy, played by Iñaki Godoy, sail beyond the comparatively familiar waters of the East Blue and into the Grand Line, a stretch of ocean so unpredictable and wildly imagined that even the weather obeys no known law. This is the world Eiichiro Oda spent nearly 3 decades building across manga chapters and over 1,000 anime episodes. And Netflix's live-action adaptation, now in its sophomore season, steps into that mythology with a confidence that Season 1 only hinted at. The season opens at Town, a coastal city that carries the weight of history on its salt-rusted shoulders. This is the very place where the pirate king, Gol D. Roger, was publicly executed, the moment that ignited the global treasure hunt at the heart of One Piece. Production designer Richard Bridgeland fills the streets with a carnivalesque texture rooted in late Age of Sail aesthetics, theatrical and gritty in equal measure. It is here that the crew crosses paths with Marine Captain Smoker, played by Callum Kerr, whose smoke-based devil fruit powers immediately neutralize the advantages Luffy's rubber body normally provides. The encounter re-establishes one of the saga's defining tensions, the collision between pirates chasing freedom and authorities determined to crush it. From Town, the narrative propels the crew toward Reverse Mountain, the only entry point into the Grand Line, where 4 seas converge and a river defies gravity by flowing upward toward the mountain's peak. The production team recreated this ascent on an enormous physical set constructed on a tilted incline, forcing the cast to perform emotionally charged scenes while literally climbing. Once the crew crests the summit, they face something far stranger, a whale named Laboon, large enough to swallow the Going Merry whole. Rather than meeting the creature with force, Luffy chooses song. The moment is absurd and deeply sincere in the way only One Piece can manage, and the series handles it with a lightness of touch that preserves the scene's emotional logic. Whiskey Peak follows, arriving as a lantern-lit frontier outpost, bristling with exaggerated Western iconography, towering cacti on the horizon, saloons overflowing with music and suspiciously generous hospitality. The visual language borrows from Sergio Leone by way of anime surrealism, and the mood pivots sharply when the welcome proves to be anything but genuine. A midnight ambush triggers one of the season's most physically impressive action sequences, in which Zoro faces 100 assassins in a sprawling brawl. Makenyu executes much of the choreography with a martial discipline that grounds the fight in physical reality, even as his opponents sport outlandish costumes and hairstyles that belong in no rational universe. Little Garden follows next, transporting the crew to an island frozen in prehistoric time. Dinosaurs move through dense, humid jungle, while 2 giants, Dory and Brogy, continue a duel that began more than a century before the Straw Hats ever arrived. Their centuries-long standoff is not played for laughs. It becomes, instead, an unexpectedly meditative examination of honor, loyalty, and the warrior's code themes that echo classical epic tradition while maintaining the whimsy that defines Oda's storytelling. The production relies heavily on oversized physical sets and practical prosthetics to give the giants weight and presence, keeping the environment from dissolving into CGI abstraction. Drum Island closes the season's arc with a tonal shift into colder, quieter territory both literally and emotionally. The island's landscape is defined by cylindrical snow-capped peaks surrounding the hollowed-out ruin of the Drum Kingdom, a country whose despotic ruler Wapol once monopolized medical care before abandoning his people entirely. When Nami is struck by a life-threatening illness, the crew must scale those frozen mountains to reach Dr. Kureha, an eccentric physician whose sharp cynicism conceals a compassion shaped by grief and the memory of her colleague Dr. Hiruluk. The arc reframes the island as a medical parable, with Hiruluk's belief that a nation's deepest wounds can be healed through compassion forming the philosophical underpinning for the arrival of the crew's future doctor. That future doctor is Tony Chopper, voiced by Michaela Hoover, a talking reindeer who walks upright, weeps, and carries the full weight of a tragic backstory that transforms what could have been a mascot into one of the most emotionally resonant characters of the season. Rendering Chopper in live action carried enormous risk. The visual effects team appears to have found the precise calibration between cartoon expressiveness and textural believability, with Chopper's wide eyes and hesitant voice doing the heavy lifting, where photorealism alone would have failed. The ensemble at the center of all of this continues to be the season's most reliable engine. Godoy brings a reckless optimism to Luffy that never tips into irritating naivety. The character's stubbornness feels like a moral position rather than a personality flaw. Emily Rudd's Nami sharpens into the crew's tactical anchor, her pragmatism and intelligence increasingly indispensable as the threats escalate. Jacob Romero Gibson locates something genuinely human inside Usopp's cowardice, making the character's fear recognizable rather than merely comic. Taz Skylar plays Sanji's easy charisma and martial arts bravado against an emotional sensitivity that emerges in quieter scenes with real impact. And Mackenyu's Zoro remains the ensemble's gravitational center, dry, disciplined, and quietly essential whenever the narrative risks spinning into chaos. The expanding supporting cast adds further dimension to a world already dense with competing ambitions. Lera Abova moves through scenes as Miss All Sunday with a bewitching menace that suggests ambitions far larger than what the season reveals. Charithra Chandran brings urgency and warmth to Princess Vivi, whose alliance with the Straw Hats gradually reframes the stakes of the entire arc. David Dastmalchian leans fully into the absurdity of the wax-wielding Mr. 3, and the series is visibly more alive whenever he appears on screen. The writing team has quietly embedded a constellation of references that reward long-time readers without alienating newcomers. Whispers of God Valley, a fleeting echo of the sun god Nika, wooden carvings nodding toward Elbaf, and a familiar violinist among the Rumbar pirates playing Binks's brew. They land as promises, not distractions. What lingers longest, though, is how faithfully the season captures what makes One Piece matter beyond the adventure. The Straw Hat flag has appeared on real protest banners across the world for a reason. Luffy's piracy was never really about treasure. It is a standing refusal to let any authority, institution, or rigid hierarchy define the limits of a person's dignity or dreams. Season 2 says that louder and with more conviction than Season 1 ever could. With Alabasta on the horizon, the voyage is only now hitting its stride. What did you think of One Piece Season 2 on Netflix? Did Chopper win you over, or was there another moment that had you completely hooked? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more breakdowns and reviews of everything hitting your streaming queue, hit like and subscribe so you never miss a sale.